It's an absolutely beautiful afternoon, and it's lovely to see Jayne Turney here in her garden. So Jayne has taken the opportunity to get a bit of a tan on her legs at the same time. So hi Jayne, and welcome.
Hello.
So Jayne and I have been, we know each other a couple of years now, I think, doing various bits and pieces together. And I just thought it would be amazing for Jayne to get to share some of her story. She's got some really interesting tales to tell us, particularly about Tom, her little pony. So Jayne, tell us a little bit about yourself. Just give us an overview of who you are and what brings you here today.
So I'm Jayne. I've been sort of competing more seriously dressage for, will be over 5 years now. I always think of it as being 5, but probably 6 or 7 years. Although my interest in dressage really started about 20 years ago, where one of my instructors actually asked. I was on a mad fell pony. He was a jumping pony actually, because all I did was the dressage so that I could jump, being totally honest. And I had this crazy fell pony who was very, very hot. I was told by a lot of people actually that I would never get anywhere with him, that he was untrainable. And he ended up doing some really nice dressage tests for his jumping. But I learned the world with him really early on. In so many ways. And funnily enough, I was having a lesson with him with a man called Mark Townsend, and he asked me out of the blue if I'd ever considered doing the talent spotting scheme that BD were running at that time. I think I can't remember what it's changed to now, but it was kind of what it started off with. And I was a bit like, no, because me dressage. But it actually kind of almost gave me a bit of a sort of, I don't know, it was like can't think of the word, but it kind of sparked me into thinking, oh, maybe I could actually be good at this. And I really have to sort of thank him for sort of starting that off and setting the journey along, really. But it was a few years after that I was offered an opportunity with Judy Harvey, and I spent a year there as a sort of working pupil, and then learned a lot. Also learned a lot of what I didn't know actually about dressage and schooling and training, and actually how inexperienced I was with different horses, because I'd always had my pony club ponies that I'd sort of trained myself and kind of self-taught. And then from there, obviously that's where I met Charlotte and we became really good friends. But through that, I also met her sister, and so somehow kind of went off in a totally different direction and worked with Emma Jayne with show ponies. And I did that for sort of 8 or 9 years. Doing that, I definitely learned a lot about riding different horses, different ponies. And you had to learn a lot of tricks. And it also taught me sort of using your arena and using the time that you had to show off a little bit. So then when I come back to the dressage, it had really given me a lot of background really to be able to push on and do what I always dreamed I wanted to do. Am I babbling?
No, not at all. That's lovely. No, it's perfect.
It's a long old story.
It is.
You know, it's been quite a long time coming, and in a lot of ways I feel like I'm an older person achieving my dreams. I mean, I'm not old, but I am older in taking on, it's taken me a long time to sort of actually believe in myself, have people believe in me, and have the horses to ride and be able to achieve my dreams. So I think it was, how old is he, 11, so sort of 7, 8, 9, 10, 8 years ago now it would be, that I had the phone call from Charlotte asking if I fancied a challenge, and that challenge ended up being little Tom Cruise. He was a very wild 3-year-old pony, and I fell in love with him before I even met him. To this day, I don't think Charlotte will ever believe what she did for me in giving me that opportunity, because I think the fact that she put her trust in me to produce one for her was like a massive confidence boost, and the journey with him has just been amazing. And I'd say he's probably taught me more than any, really.
So we're
And
going to get onto your journey with Tom later on, because I just love hearing about him. He's so cute.
I love talking about him a bit too much.
Well, you're going to get to, so that's cool. So, I mean, it's lovely that you are now at that point where you feel like there's people that believe in you. You're finally being able to achieve your dream. I know you've had an amazing past year. So just tell us a little bit about the past year you've had, and what is it that's enabled you to have that past year? What's been different for you in the past year?
Oh, so yeah, I think last year was kind of the stuff of dreams, really. I mean, going back to when I said about Mark saying to me, "Oh, you could have a talent for this," and I remember sort of saying, "Oh, one day I might be able to ride to Great Britain." But if I'm totally honest, I sort of like where the journey's taken me. I always thought I was very good with the young horses, with slightly tricky horses, because they're what I always worked with, and I was in my comfort zone with them, and I was quite happy. I was, especially from doing the show ponies, you used to kind of ride them and produce them for child ride, and I took just as much pleasure in producing them and watching them progress as I did in if I was doing it myself. And from that, I probably took a bit of a back seat. But I think from sort of like the last few years I had, obviously I got the ride on PJ, who's Penhaligon's Jupiter, who is owned by Shirley Rixon and David Rixon, and we have just had the most incredible journey as well. And Shirley and David have been amazing in supporting me, because obviously I'd only ridden up to medium and just start an advanced medium, so to have a horse that talented, and they supported me in actually training on beyond that. They could have easily given him to a more experienced rider that would probably have got there a lot faster. So to have really stuck with me, I'm really thankful for that. And because of that, I think me and the horse have an amazing partnership, and it's lovely. But last year was like my first year competing small tour, and it was just amazing. I mean, that horse is just incredible. Going from winning at our very first high profile at the beginning of the year at PSG, taking me through to the nationals at the end of the year at small tour level, competing in both the PSG, the Inter One, and then the freestyle, which I made a bit of a boo-boo in, which is a big old learning curve. We do laugh about it now. And then from there, I got to compete at Hoys, which obviously I caught up with you there before competing. And that in itself was like a dream come true. I've been to Hoys with show ponies, but to go in the dressage was just, to ride in that sort of crowd was like riding at the Olympics, for dressage. You just don't get to do things like that. So that was immense, and he absolutely enjoyed it. He was a little bit too much. We were a little bit hot, made a few mistakes because of that. But at the same time, it actually made me think, blimey, he's got it there to go all the way. And then from there, we then competed in our first international at Le Mans. And we kind of, on the way there, me and Shirley just went together, just me and his owner, Shirley. And we drove down. We followed Katie Bailey, actually, which was lovely because it felt like a real team effort. And on the way there, we were like, I can't believe we're doing this. Both of us were just like, we can't believe we're doing this. This is amazing. And we said, we're just going to have a good time. We're going to enjoy it. And we're just going to see. We didn't know how he was going to cope with the journey. We didn't know how he was going to be, because, it's having the nationals, which was only sort of a month or so before, was his first time doing 3 days in a row. I mean, this is a horse that's always gone out and been good and had such a good outlook at a competition that we'd take him out, we'd qualify him, we'd put him away, we'd train, we'd go to a championship. And I mean, he's been amazing. He's gone to these championships and I've had some amazing results. And then he'd get put away. So to suddenly go from that to competition after competition, and then doing 3 days of competition, plus that journey, we thought, well, we'll just have to see. And he was amazing. He bounced off the lorry the other end. We ate a lot, we drank a lot. The horse just settled and was brilliant, and I thoroughly enjoyed just having the one horse to look after. And I mean, we had some amazing results. We were equal 10th, I think, in the PSG. Then he was 5th in the Inter One, and then I ended up 5th in the music as well. So, but the whole experience, it was just made me want to go and do it again, really. which we were hoping to this year, but this year's obviously all gone a little bit different. So, but it's more time to change and not change. And I'm hoping sort of this year with this time we can just sort of put it to a bit more training so that hopefully we'll get our chance to do a few more small tour, because that's what we're comfortable at, and also training more towards the Grand Prix, which I never thought I'd say that.
So tell us a little bit about that. I love the fact that whenever I speak to you, it's like you have to pinch yourself all the time, isn't it? Because I never thought I'd be here. I never thought I'd be doing this.
No, absolutely. Me riding Grand Prix, like I said, I thought I was going to be a young horse producer, and if you sort of get a bit of a tricky one, and I did a lot of breaking and training of the young ones, so it just never, and I suppose I never really put it in my sights, because I just didn't believe that somebody like me would be able to do that, and especially to the level that I'd like to think we could possibly do, because I mean that horse is absolutely amazing. He's a world-class horse. So geez, there's not many people have chance to train a horse like their first horse that they train up to that level. They don't normally have one that's as amazing as that. So, and then of course I've got little Tom, that having kicked on with PJ and learnt so much on PJ, and sort of I think it'd be sort of good two and a bit years ago, Charlotte was just like, well, we might as well just kick on with Tom as well, because he was rather cheeky in the medium at the Winters, totally put me in my place, and she was like, right, we might as well just kick on and teach him a change and get going. So sort of 2 years on, I'm all of a sudden going, he could be Grand Prix at the same sort of time as PJ. And again, he may be a pony, but he's also exceptionally talented. So not only have I got one, I've got two.
So I know you're desperate to tell us about him. So tell us about little Tom then. Tell us. I mean, you've said how he came into your life. I'm going to have to just sit back and listen.
Just tell me to shut up if I ramble. So yeah, Tom came into my life 8 years ago now, it'll be, in sort of October time. Charlotte rang me and said that she'd got this, she'd bought this project and she thought that I'd be the perfect person for him. She was like, he's a little wild. And yeah, I remember we trolleyed off down. Well, I went off for a lesson on another horse, and when I went with the other horse, I picked him up and brought him home. And I've never seen anything have such a tantrum about going on the lorry in my life. That was my first sort of impression of him. He put himself on the floor. He was not going anywhere near it, and that was without anyone really. Nobody was putting any particular pressure on him. They were just like, come on, go on. And eventually he did go on, and once he was in there, he travelled like an absolute saint. And I thought, well, I don't know quite what we're going to have to break here. It could be a bit. And he was nervous about everything, having his rugs on. If there was too many people around him, he was a bit scared of people. And I know he'd never had a bad time as a youngster. He was just flighty, I think. And yeah, that was just his personality. But my very good friend Sam helped me break him in. She did sort of a lot of the groundwork, and when it came to getting on, I remember he was far more interested in trying to eat sand than he was in even thinking about what I was doing. And I think within about a week we were in the school, walk, trot, canter, and I kept thinking to myself, he's going to realise soon that I'm on his back and I'm telling him what to do. And he was a little bit kind of gave you the feeling that I was riding him because he was allowing me to, not because I was any good. He kind of always gave me that feeling, and to begin with I just had to sort of coast along a little bit and not put until he'd really learned anything. I didn't really ask that much of him, because I think I probably would have ended up with something not quite rideable, but thankfully the way that I did it seemed to work really well for him, and from there I trained him on with the help of being cast, actually, and helped me a lot with him as a baby. And at the end of that year, he did the Young Pony Championships that was at Berry Farm. It was the only one that they did at the High Profile show. And bless him, he'd done one show before. I think I took him to Addington and did an unaffiliated so he'd been out. And then he went from Addington, which is quite a plain, nice welcoming arena, to the indoor Berry Farm where there was all flowers, and because it was a high profile, it was, and I'd never ridden at a high profile. I just sort of turned up not really knowing what to expect, and bless his heart, he kind of went in there, and for the first time ever I felt him kind of hold his breath, and I was like, come on, we'll be all right. And from that day on, I knew he was going to be special, because he just was like, okay, we got this. Pulled off a lovely test, and he won that with over 80%, which was amazing. And then he won sort of the championship. Obviously the young pony, young horse classes are just the same. They're sort of not quite like doing a test, but it's still a really good score. And then I brought him on sort of the following year, towards sort of novice, and I think I qualified him. And then we thought it would be a really nice idea, because obviously he was being trained towards doing the pony and child stuff. We thought it'd be a really good idea to get a young rider on him. And Phoebe Peters rode him, and she did an amazing job on him. And I think she did the regionals, and then she did the nationals, which he won under her. And I can't remember, I was like a mum watching their child. Did his test, and I remember, I'm not like an emotional person, but I watched him do this novice test and it made me cry. So yeah, he's made me cry more times than any pony, I think, for good and bad reasons. So then from there we sort of kicked on towards going up towards the medium, because that's what they need to do the young rider stuff. And I think the idea was for Phoebe to carry on doing that. But he I can't remember quite sort of what. So he got taken onto the prime squad, because obviously she had Lucci on. She was able to then have a second horse, so she didn't really have to do many of the trials. They just wanted him to do a test just to see that he was sort of good enough, really. So again, I think it was an Addington high profile she did on him, and won that with, I think, 73, which was amazing for his first PFEI pony test. And yeah, it was sort of all looking like going for great things. And then he was going to do Addington CDI, and my farrier at the time, any mistake that I'm sure they can make, he just put slightly too long a nails on him that time. He must have changed, and he'd slightly burnt his foot back, and he bruised his foot, and it took ages to get it right. And we thought he was there. I remember sort of like morning, noon and night, I was tubbing and icing and everything under the sun I could do to try and get his foot right, and we were really struggling. He was fine at home, so we took him to Addington, and he got pulled up in the trot up. I mean, it was very, very slight, and to be fair, they pulled him up and they looked at him, and they looked again and thought he was going to be fine. But there was a lot of sort of like ifing and butting and this and that, and we were just like, it was so stressful and just all a bit too much. We were like, let's just take him home, which we kind of did. I sort of just took him home because I just wanted to take my baby home, because all this was being a bit strange. And then I didn't realise until after that nobody had actually informed anybody, and we could have been in big trouble for doing so. So a big lesson learnt there, but a lot of apologies made, and they were all very, very good about it. And this is going back a good few years. So yeah, he sort of come away, and then we sort of never really sort of stuck up again with sort of Phoebe riding him. So I then took the reins back, started training a lot more with Charlotte, and that's when she was like, well, you should do, because at that time it was the sort of restricted and open. She said, you should have a go at the do the regionals and have a go at nationals with him if you qualify, obviously, which was amazing, because I knew he had a good chance of doing well at both. And he I remember the sort of week coming up to my regionals, I think sort of like every other week I think I was there with Charlotte, and I learned an immense amount. And then before my regionals, and she was really good because she met me there and she worked me in, and I was freaking out because I'm a lot better than I was, but at the time I did get very, very nervous. And I remember Charlotte's even said to me since, she wasn't sure that I'd ever really get my head set around it, because I never really believed in myself for a lot of reasons. And he did a super test at the regionals, and we won it and qualified, so that was great. And I mean, the biggest relief for me was when I come out that Charlotte told me I'd done a good job, because she's whenever I ride down that centre line, I always kind of almost think if she's sat at sea like that, she's more scary than any judge. So am I babbling? So yeah, that kind of like, I'd qualified for, I think I'd done the winter nationals at the beginning of the year, but this was my first time riding at summer nationals. It was always my dream to ride at the summer nationals. I'd remember going there when I was working with Judy, and I think it was at the time that Roland won on Fitzcarraldo, the young horses, and I remember standing watching him do the prize giving, standing up in that lovely big arena, and I remember sort of just thinking that's a real dream to do that. And again, never really thinking it would ever happen to somebody like me. So yeah, it was just amazing to have qualified. So the week before the nationals, I did take him down to Charlotte, so I spent the week with her, and we had just a fabulous week, really, training. And she got me, well, we were doing baking cakes. I remember it's the first time I'd ever done spin. I went to the gym with her, bearing in mind I don't really go to the gym. There I am next to Charlotte, and she's laughing because I'm there. Anyway, I've never seen anyone move their legs so fast as her. Honestly, like I was like, I cannot keep up. I'm like killing myself trying to keep up with her, because I thought I've got to sort of like, can't lose face. Yeah, that we sort of did that a couple of times actually. I think I had a couple of sessions with her PT, and which again was really interesting in sort of working on all my weaknesses in my body, because she's brilliant at picking up things I do. A lot of trainers I sort of go to, because I sit quite pretty, I think, from doing the showing. I don't get many people really kind of get stuck in about sort of what my body's actually doing, and I'm such a believer in what I do reflecting on the horse, and she's so hot, as you can imagine, on picking up on the real fine details. So having her there working with me in the gym as well was really helpful. Yeah, so we sort of set off to nationals, and I sort of had all this training, and I remember riding through the test the day before, and I remember nearly crying at the end because I felt like I'd done it so bad, because she was like, no, it's not good, it's got to be this, this and this. And I watched that video all night, I think. Set off for there the following morning, and she sort of met me there in the afternoon. And he just felt amazing. I remember working him in and thinking, wow, he feels like the best he'd felt all week, really. And she was so good in the working in, sort of keeping me calm, and just put us in the right place, really. And then I rode this test, and I came out and I cried, did a lot of crying, because I felt like, I think because I'd done it the day before with her, and I know that I'd ridden it like with that, when you've got somebody sort of like really on you for each movement, I knew I could do it so much better. And she'd really taught me that. I mean, she taught me in the months coming up to it, but particularly that week, having watched her ride and done what I do, I knew how important it was to really ride that test. And I came out and I just felt like I hadn't done it as well as I could have done, and I felt that she'd put so much into me that week, and then I just felt like I hadn't done what I needed to do. And she was like, why are you crying? I was like, oh, it was useless. She was like, it was really good. She was like, shh, is everyone listening? And because I'm quite loud, my voice travels. Anyway, I went, put him away, and I was really pleased with him, and because he was such a good boy. I mean, he did no arena walk, he just went in that arena and just stormed round. I've always said with him, I feel I've got more pressure on me, because if I press the right buttons and I ride it right, he'll do it, because that is how he is. He's amazing in the arena. So off I went to sort of sort myself out, pull myself together, and just sort of like give him a good old cuddle. And I think I left it ages before I headed back up towards the scoreboard or anything, and I hadn't heard anything, because when you're down the bottom there, you don't really hear anything being said. And I met Olivia Towers. She was coming down the hill as I was coming up, and they were like, oh, really well done on your score. I was just like, oh, what? I was like, oh God, what have I got? I was like, is it bad? I haven't seen it. And they're like, oh no, don't you know? We don't know if we should tell you. I was like, oh, tell me. So they were like, you got 72%. So then at that point, I think the smile kind of like, I nearly cried again, I think. And then I was just like, oh my God, and I've got a really good friend with me. And then, of course, I was quite early to go in the day. It was an afternoon class, and it didn't finish till about 6. So I was quite early to go, and so of course I had all day to wait, and we kind of had to go and get them ready for the prize giving before even knowing where you'd ended up. And I think there was about 4 to go when I was getting him ready, and I kept him with Jo Jenkins at the time, who again was a real big support. And I kept getting these texts, and I took a picture of it. I still have it to this day because it still makes me smile. And I've got, as I'm getting him ready, it's like 4 to go, you're still in the lead. 3 to go, you're still in the lead. 2 to go, you're still in the lead. And then I got, you won, and I'm really proud of you. And I don't think I read that one until I got back, but I have got the picture on my phone because I think it's one that I'll cherish forever, because it was just one of those moments. And it never really sank in, to be honest. I sort of went down there in a bit of a daze. I did that prize giving. It was like dreams coming true. And then I came out, and like this, I talked and talked and talked, because I got all the media and they're all asking me questions. And I talked and talked and talked. And when I got back up to the top, Charlotte was like, where have you been? And I was like, I was talking to the media. You're not supposed to talk to them for that long. I was like, they just kept asking me questions. And I never really got to celebrate it because it was sort of 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and I'd got a hire lorry that I had to get home. So it was kind of a bit of a rush then to sort everything out, to then get him home, to get the hire lorry home. And I drove back up to my friend's after, and she put a big banner out sort of saying congratulations, and we had pizza and champagne in the evening to celebrate, which was lovely. And I went back the following day to watch Charlotte with Florentina doing the young horse class. And I'd driven down actually with my friend who had helped me the day before. I'd driven. And then halfway through the day, I was like, oh, do you fancy driving? Will you drive me home? Because they were all bringing out, well, then we were drinking Pimm's. And so I was actually able to kind of celebrate, but we were there till quite late. And I did drink quite a lot. And in the evening, Charlotte still laughs about this today. In the evening, there was like a barbecue at the hotel around the back, and we all round there. And I remember I had to go to the loo, and she'd sort of nipped in there just before me. And she came out and she was just like, oh, look at the state of me, like I look dreadful. I said, oh, blimey. I said, I hadn't redone my makeup or anything from the morning, and sort of been drinking and out in the sun, and I know I wasn't looking particularly special. And I said to her, oh, I said, blimey, if you don't look any good, I don't know what I'm. And she looked at me and she went, don't look in the mirror. Best friends. So I was like, okay. Well, of course, went to the loo, washing my hands, looked in the mirror, and thought, oh, blimey, look at the state of that, because it wasn't good. And then I said to myself, I bloody won. Then I cried. And I walked out, and I think Ian was out there for some reason, and I was just like, oh, Ian. I looked in the mirror. I said, I thought, blimey, look at the state of that. I said, and then I realised I won. I said, then it made me cry. And of course, I got back to the table, and Charlotte was the first one, like, oh my God. She was like, you've cried, haven't you? She said, you looked in the mirror and went, I'm a winner. And I was like, that's exactly what I did. She said that made her laugh more than anything that week, because we still laugh about it to this day. It still comes up a lot in conversation, me looking in the mirror and crying. But
and it just must be amazing having the support of someone who has, done what she's done.
Yeah.
And just in case anyone doesn't realise which Charlotte you are talking about, we are of course talking about Charlotte Dujardin here, the queen of dressage. And to have a mate like that who has been and done what she has done, and yet can support you the way she does. It's something we talked about, actually, isn't it? About the fact that, it's always a bit of a concern when you've got a mate who's a genuine friend, who's that close to you, who is that good. And the sort of the trials and tribulations of that is quite interesting, isn't it? That, the things that you worry about people saying or what have you, but she doesn't ride your horses. You go in and you do it, and it's still you that does it, isn't it? So we've had some interesting conversations about your thoughts around that and things, haven't we?
Yeah. I mean, she has sat on them, obviously, and that's really helpful. In honestly, coming up towards that championship, sort of getting his fame right, I really struggled with, and she helped me a lot sort of teaching me sort of where he needed to be. And at one time in my life, I would have been like, no, I'm doing it all on my own. But I think that's part of growing up and actually kind of taking a bit of step back and taking it more as a sort of learning curve. That, you know, I mean, to have somebody of her caliber be able to sit on your horse and feel what you're feeling and then be able to show you where she would prefer it to be and then teach you to have it in that place is just, money can't buy that. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. So and the times sort of my big competition, the times that she's been there supporting me, she is amazing, you know. It is amazing to have that sort of support and that sort of help. So yeah, I know I'm very, very lucky.
And she does give you some good perspectives sometimes as well, though, doesn't she? She gives you some interesting thoughts.
Absolutely. I think because obviously she had to sort of learn a lot how to deal with pressure, especially at the times of riding with Blueberry. I mean, I don't think any of us would want to ride under the pressure that she had to, especially after the 2012 Olympics, really, because the journey up to then was just like this amazing journey of her sort of coming up from nowhere, really, for those of us. But for those that didn't know her, I think anyone that knew her knew that she was going to get there. I mean, to go and do it on her first attempt was pretty amazing, but we all knew she'd get there one day. But obviously then once she'd done that, then all the eyes were on her, and then the pressure and the expectation, especially if she just kept going and she just kept delivering it, and it just got harder and harder. So seeing her have to deal with that, and also sort of quite often, you know, we'd talk about things and she shared a lot of the knowledge that she learned from it, and also she had sort of sports psychology help, and she shared a lot of that with me. That was before I met you, obviously, sort of the early days, and that really helped put things into perspective for me, sort of riding and training and competing. And sort of learning from her how she had to sort of get into her zone before she got on, and sort of be able to lose herself so that she could ignore everything that was going on, to be able to just go in there and ride like she does.
And obviously we've been doing some bits for the last couple of years. I mean, we haven't specifically done necessarily mental things with you around competition things, but actually a lot of it is very similar. We've worked on other stuff. I'm obviously not going to talk about what we worked on, but what have you found in the last couple of years has been the difference for you? So you've had that viewpoint, you've had that experience, she supported you, but what about yourself then? What's been your changes in mindset over the last couple of years, when, you know, these are pinch me, I'm really here moments that you've had in the last couple of years, aren't they? So how have you kept, and you're still producing the goods, you know, you've kept going, you go out there, you are well, no one's producing anything right now, are they? Let's face it, we're all winning at home. What is it that's made the real difference for you?
I think as you start being able to achieve things, I think it sort of actually, it gives you that belief that you can, and also I've sort of figured out a way that works for me, because I do still get quite nervous, and especially when competing PJ, really, more so than, I mean, it used to be a little bit Tom when Tom was Charlotte's, but obviously, well, even with him now it takes the pressure off with him being mine a little bit, even though I feel I need to do him justice. But obviously with PJ, he's done so well, and he's been so consistent. I do get sort of quite nervous with the thought that I've got to kind of keep that up or better it. So I do get nervous before competitions. I think it's that nervous that you want to do well, though. So it's probably a slightly different nerves to what I used to get. I think at the beginning, once I started sort of competing with all the horses that I rode, really, I was almost not desperate, but I so wanted to do it, and I so wanted to do it well, that I put too much pressure on myself. And then I learned to kind of cope with that, and I learned how to deal with things in the working in, and then that's kind of helped me move forwards to sort of a slightly different type of nerves. But if anyone sees me sort of before I compete in anything big, I'm normally wittering, saying, oh blimey, I'm going to be terrible, I'm just hoping I don't go wrong, because that's been known. I have gone wrong before a couple of times. I think you get so focused and in trying to ride the best you can that you can totally blank where you're going. So that's another thing in my head that I'm a bit like, oh, what if I do that? Because that, I sort of like really kick myself for that, but it happens and you have to sort of forgive yourself for it and move on. But I have a system now that I know works. So you'll see me sort of earlier on in the day, I'll be wittering around and sort of talking too much. I'm very good at doing that. But then what I tend to try and do is sort of, me and Shirley quite often at a show together with PJ. So we'll sort of tack him up between us. Shirley likes to plait, so she does the sort of plaiting. I probably will keep out the way while she's doing that. Otherwise, PJ fidgets and watches everywhere I go, looking for treats, I'm sure, more so than anything else. And then when we tack up, I'll sort of start tacking him up, and then I like to do it just taking a time. And I use that time to kind of not necessarily talk to anyone. Quite often I'll do it on my own and just sort of get myself where I need to be. And then I have a definite way in which I work in. I ride them in the working in exactly as I do when I'm at home. So I have a real system and I just work through the things that I work through at home. I just sort of obviously make it sort of a bit shorter probably, but as soon as I'm on and I sort of take that deep breath and I get in the arena and I start just stretching, I just do my walk and then my trotting circles. It's almost like a switch goes off and I'm there and I'm in it. I think I didn't really realise that I did that so much until at Grand Prix this year, because of course I've forgotten about Grand Prix Festival dressage. We did the young horse PSG test, and I remember I was on quite late in the afternoon, and so in the morning it was lovely because it was beautiful. It was really warm, and so I remember me and Shirley walking around the shops in the morning, sort of killing time. And I was looking at all the people watching, and we managed to sit and watch a bit of dressage. And because I don't normally watch, I normally keep out the way because I find that makes me a bit, it sort of like tetchy. I don't know why, but as much as watching is really good and really you can learn a lot, once I've competed and got my result, I'll sit and I'll watch it all day. But up until then, I like to just try and keep things in my head. So we were wandering around and sort of noticing all these people, the amount of people that were there and that were watching, and then sort of obviously went off, did my bit. And I remember working in, and I was really lucky that Charlotte was there just before I went in, and she gave me a couple of just little that I definitely think to this day really changed the way my test went. And we did probably still to this day one of our best PSGs that we've done. It was just lovely. And I actually I finished and I looked up, and the amount of people, because I can't remember what was going on next door, there was something big going on next in the arena next door. I think it was the CDI, or so obviously the crowd was huge. And I just looked up and I was just like, oh my God. And I hadn't even noticed. I'd got on him and I'd gone in there and I hadn't noticed anyone until I was walking him out on a long lane. And that's when it hit me. So, I think that's what I've sort of felt works for me. I just have to get myself into a place.
And what is it that you do to get yourself into that place? So you keep yourself away from things, you don't necessarily watch other people. That's got a big comparison, making sure that it's not very often I'll look at my times. It's not very often I'll go and look at scoreboards and watch who's in my see who's in my class or see who's going when. I'll sort of try and sort of see maybe who I'm following, so I know when I'm working in who to keep an eye on, so I know what time I've got. But if honestly, I like to have a watch on me, or I'll speak to the stewards. I think I just keep myself a little bit away from it. I'll quite often sort of just before getting tacked up, maybe I'll sit myself away from everybody and I'll watch an old test. So if I'm doing a PSG, I'll watch a PSG, and I like to watch the old ones where I've made mistakes, because then it just highlights for me where I need to be on it a little bit more. Or I'll watch a bit of a lesson that I've had, so I just know which bits I need to be thinking of. And I think that's sort of where I get it. It's just keeping myself away, keeping quiet, and just having a little conversation with myself to make sure I'm in the right mental sort of state to be able to get on, and then taking a deep breath as well. I think sometimes sort of at the beginning you get on and I sort of like really breathe in and sort of go, right, and now we're on it, sort of like almost blow out all the sort of worry and the wittering. I think I get rid of all that earlier on when I'm chattering away, and then I get on and I kind of sort of just chill, and then we just do it.
hopefully.
I find that really fascinating when I work with riders, especially, you know, top level riders, is that you get the people who are very quiet normally, who need to kind of work themselves up into being ready to go. And then you get the people that quite like yourself, that are quite buzzy and chatty and what have you, who need to bring themselves down to be calm and able to focus. And it's really interesting what people do in order to get themselves where they need to be. And you've had to learn over the years, haven't you, what the pressure performance curve is for you. So how much pressure do you need to perform at your best, and what do you need to do to make sure it doesn't tip over into too much pressure so you don't? And the only way to learn that really is to experience it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And to learn from it. So, and I know that you're a great believer in learning from things. You've got a wonderful mindset, a growth mindset. It's not like, oh, that was terrible, I'll just give in. You can't have done that to get to where you are now.
No.
You've definitely got this mindset around, what can I learn from that? What was that about? So tell us more about this kind of learning mindset that you've got that helps you reflect.
Well, I think, again, as you say, it's almost doing it that then makes you realise, because I think more so in the last few years, because obviously doing sort of like even from the advanced medium upwards, because it was totally new to me, and because again I feel like I've been doing it for a long time, even though I wasn't doing the advanced stuff. I feel like I should be better than what I am, so I do put a lot of pressure on myself sort of in that sense. I always think, and especially, you know, sort of like I managed to sort of train with Charlotte, and sort of, I mean, we've been on totally opposite directions really. So, but I do feel like I should be better than what I am sometimes. So I do put a lot of pressure, more so on myself as a rider than I ever would on my horses. And so I think I didn't really realise it until, I think, was it the beginning? No, it wasn't. It was a year before last that I did the advanced medium with PJ at the Winter Championships, and I'd had a really amazing lesson with Charlotte, I think the week before, and we were really kind of pushing for that little bit more, sort of pushing for that sort of more expression and sort of more basically, to try and aim for the biggest sort of marks. And when I did the advanced medium at the Nationals, I got that in my head, and I think I just overrode. I went in there and I was riding for more like I would in a lesson, as opposed to, I probably not overconfident, because I don't think I've ever been overconfident, but I think I just went in there and was like, right, and just I was in the gold advanced medium, and I felt like, you know, I'm on this amazing horse and I've really got to ride for it. And we probably did some of the best trot work we'd ever done. And in the canter, we just made loads of silly mistakes. And we came out with a 68, which is a good mark. But I was like, oh, it should be a 70. And I came out and I was so cross with myself, because I just felt like I just hadn't ridden it as well as I should have done. And just those mistakes, I felt like I'd just made too many mistakes. And it was quite good, because the following day I got to go back in and do the music. But I just think what I tend to do is I'll come out and then I'll be really cross with myself, and I'll have this like little discussion with myself about what went wrong. And then I think, again, it's almost like you have to take a deep breath and go, right, okay, well, it went wrong, but now I've got to sort it out. So what did I do? What did I do to make it go wrong? Okay, I overrode. And it was, I mean, I was in a very lucky position that it was videoed, and I think I was staying with Charlotte, and in the evening I let her watch it, and because I was picking on myself, and she was like, for God's sake, get a grip, it's just a dressage test, you know. And she watched it and she was just like, well, the trot work was really good. She said, but you just pushed that bit more in the canter, but sometimes without actually pushing, you don't know that you're going to make those mistakes. I just shouldn't really have done it at a national championships. It's a mistake I should have made at a sort of one of the easier tests. But sometimes when you make the bigger mistakes at the bigger competitions, they probably have a bit more of an impact and really make you kind of go, right, I can't let that happen again. And the following day, he was super. We had a really good ride around the music, and I think he ended up third. And then what else? Sort of like, I think then sort of move on a year at the regionals at PSG. It was a year that I think regionals felt like they went on for about 6 days, because we had snow. And so the day I was meant to do the PSG, we had snow. And so again, like what I was saying about earlier, I do have this particular way in which I work him on the days before a test to make sure we're in the right place for the test. But rather than being able to, I'd got him obviously right ready for it, and then I kind of had to let him down, and then I had to take a step back to do the advanced media music, because that's what I qualified him for, to then pick him up again for the PSG, and he ended up doing sort of 6 days. And admittedly, I didn't, because I had in my head, I can't push him, so I did some sort of stretchy days, and actually, I think really, even in hindsight, I don't know what I could have done different, because I just think it was just one of those. It was out of my hands, really, and I hadn't overdone him, but at the same time, it was really, really cold the morning I did my PSG, and I think he got a little bit cold, probably from working sort of 6 days when he wouldn't ever normally do that. He was a little bit tight, and he just got really tonguey with the bit in the PSG, and he'd never done it. He's never done it before or since, but it just happened. And looking back at it, I felt like I'd ridden as well as I could have done, but again, we ended up, I mean, really, he should have been sort of in the top end, and we were sort of like still about 6th and on a sort of 67% with a lot of big mistakes. Again, I should have been pleased, but I knew we could have done a lot better. And again, I went through the whole like, oh God, terrible, blah, blah, blah. And I don't think I really realised what an impact that had on the rest of the year, because that was the year that I had just the most amazing year ever. And I think it was just actually, we made all our mistakes in that one day. So I was able to go away, get cross with myself, think about it, and then put my head down into training to try and make sure it didn't happen again. And wow, what a year we had. So, and it wasn't really until the end of the year, I think I sort of said to you, it wasn't until the end of the year that I looked back and went, do you know what? When I really think about it, they're sort of 2 of the tests that I really pull out and go, they were disastrous. I mean, they weren't disastrous really, but in my mind they were. But they're the biggest things that probably have made us go on to achieve what we have, more so than any of the really good tests we've had.
And that demonstrates beautifully, doesn't it? The idea of you've got to get stuff wrong, you've got to fail a little bit to be able to really, really learn, isn't it?
Yeah.
And hello.
Sorry.
That's all right.
She's Buddy.
Oh, hi, Buddy.
He I think I can't remember what he completely took my thought away. There. I don't even know what I was going to say.
We were talking about how you've got to fail sometimes. I mean, obviously you'd rather not do it on the stage, as it were, but sometimes you have got to do that to be able to learn from it and know what to do to improve and get better, haven't you? Because if you're always just kind of getting the same thing, then you're never going to improve beyond that, are you?
Yeah, and almost sometimes, as much as you don't want it to happen on the big stages, when it does happen on the big stages, it then, when you get over that, it's like, well, you know, nobody's died. It's all, you know, we're all still here. We're all still training. You know, there's a lot worse things that can happen, and it kind of puts things into perspective for you a little bit more too, probably. So yeah.
Sure. Yep. Cool. Okay. Right. So I've got a question that's come in for you. They said, this is brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm a show rider, and I'd love to hear what your top tips to transfer those skills into dressage test riding, because I don't get the same enjoyment or vibes out of dressage riding.
Oh, well, I think what I found, I'll sort of go from my own experiences, really. I think that's the easiest way of sort of going through it. And still now, because I still ride show ponies for different producers, and I still went to Hoy's last year to help a producer. And I thoroughly enjoy just tipping my toe, like going back into Hoy's. You can't beat it, getting on a pony and going to ride in that top spec arena. It's brilliant. But I think what I found when you do, and I actually find dressage less stressful in some ways, because when you do a show, when you do your bit in front of the judge, basically you feel like you can't really make a mistake, because if you sort of canter on the wrong leg or something goes really wrong, that's the whole show that's ruined. Whereas with dressage, if you make a mistake, that's one movement that's marked out of 10. So I know when I was sort of competing showing that, I used to get really sort of like, God, I can't make a mistake. I've got to make sure this goes right. But also, I think when you do your show, you have that minute or so, minute and a half, 2 minutes or however long, to really show off and show the judge what you've got. So you've got to sort of sit up and be like, right, this is my moment. And that I kind of have definitely taken forwards into the dressage. You know, when you go down that centre line, you've got to sit up and look like you believe that you are on the best pony and you're going to do the best test, and they're going to sit up and take notice of you. And it seems a bit sort of strange, but having watched loads of people ride, I think that's a really big thing. If having sat with a judge and done writing and stuff, if somebody bumbles down the centre line, or same as if you're judging in the show ring, somebody bumbles out and they sort of looking down and they're sort of like do a tiny little show as quick as they can and to get it over with, you kind of don't feel like they're there sort of showing off what they've got. Whereas when you have somebody trot down that centre line and sit up and look up and ride, and exactly the same in a show. If you come out of the lineup and you stand your pony up in front of them and you sit up and you're like, right, look at me, I'm here, and you're going to take notice of me, and this is what I'm going to do. I think that's one of the biggest things I'd probably learn, making sure you're really smart, that the pony or horse is really well turned out, and that you believe that you have as much of a chance as anybody else, and that you sort of come out and say, right, look at me. That's probably what I learned most from the showing. I think you've got to be a show off.
Yeah, you've got to show off, and it's really interesting because I've over the years heard all sorts of people's opinions, and definitely one of the ones from the people that get really good scores is the way that they go in and say to the judge, they're not saying, I'm really sorry for being here, let me just get out your way for you. They're saying
they're noticing you.
Yeah, it's like, this is our moment, watch us now, because I love this horse and we are one, and let's see what we can do. Yeah, and even if it goes a bit wrong in it, they still kind of go, oops, never mind, carrying on, because hey ho. Yeah,
and I think it's sort of, you can take a lot of sort of the dressage training to help put the horse pony make it look and go better for the showing, and vice versa. I mean, I learned so many tricks through the showing that really helped, definitely helped put me where I am today, because without having ridden all the different, I mean, we had sort of all sorts. And so now, moving on, when I'm teaching or when I'm riding, there's not a lot that I haven't seen. And there's none that I would say, oh, I'm not working with that. I think any horse pony of any shape, size, breed, if you just put the basic training in, you can make anything into something. You just got to believe it.
That's so nice. I really love that. And actually, it's interesting because I did a Q&A with Caroline Moore the other day, and she said exactly the same thing, which is it doesn't matter what you've got. Put the basics in, put the work in, and you'll make it happen. I mean, obviously it can't be compromised in some major way, but essentially,
No, absolutely, yeah.
So any last top tips or thoughts or anything from you, Jayne, your experience over the years, looking back? In fact, here's a question for you. What would you have said to yourself 10 years ago if you could give yourself a message back to your 10
I'd have given myself a blooming kick up the bum and told myself to stop fanning around and to actually go out and do it, and to believe in myself and not take no for an answer. Just make it happen, and in any which way, because I was like 10 years ago, I was not in a great place, and I wasn't really where I wanted to be, and I was almost waiting for somebody to sort of push me there. And to I've been lucky enough that I've sort of moved on, and I've had some amazing people behind me that have given me that kick that I needed to actually start doing what I've always wanted to do. But I think at the time, you can't wait for somebody to do that for you. If you want it, you've got to go out there and get it any which way you can. And if whatever you have sort of horse pony wise, if you want to go and do dressage with it, just put the work in and go and do it. And it's amazing what you can achieve. So I would have given myself a good kick up the bum.
I love that, and that's super inspirational. So if anyone's listening or watching this right now and they're thinking, oh, I'd really like that to be me, then your advice is have a kick up the bum, tell yourself you can do it, go and find a good trainer, and just get the basics in and give it a go. What you got to lose?
At least if you're trying, you've got nothing to lose. And if you get knocked back down, just brush yourself up, learn from it, get up and carry on.
Yep, get back in that saddle. So thank you so much, Jayne.
Right.
Absolutely fascinating. Really lovely to hear your story and all about your journey. Really inspirational for people as well. And it's an absolute pleasure supporting you. And it is good fun when we do get to have a little bit of bit of fizz at the shows.
Oh, absolutely.
You're a girl of the same heart as me. It's no problem at all. We always know we can share a little bit of something. Cool.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Jayne. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would you say? You've got Facebook, Instagram, those kind of things?
Yeah, sort of Facebook and Instagram is probably the best way to sort of contact me.
And what's your Facebook?
I'm very friendly.
Yeah, she is. JT Dressage Training, is that your Facebook? Is that right?
Yeah.
And Instagram, can you remember off the top of your head?
I think it's just my name.
Okay, it's just Jayne Turney. I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite boring. Yeah.
Right, it is what it is, isn't it, really?
Easy to find.
And I mean, you know, like we talked about before, you're doing this for the love, not the fame. So if your Instagram account isn't something sparkly, hey ho.
It's more for the training as much as anything. I mean, I love competing, and to get a chance to compete internationally is just insane. I still can't believe it. But the thing, even like now, to me, if I could just like keep learning and keep training and keep having the most amazing lessons, and I enjoy training as well. I really enjoy watching people achieve their dreams, because I know how hard it was for me and sort of what it means to me. So it's just as rewarding when I see the people that I support going on and doing it too. So yeah.
And so one very last question then. I know you love training people to help them see their dreams. What's the ultimate dream?
The ultimate dream? I think at the minute it is to get to Grand Prix and just see where I go from there. I'm not very good at putting the whole like, what, this is what I'm going to go and do. But yeah, I think if I can just get up to Grand Prix and just achieve that I've never really thought that I would, who knows? Sky's the limit.
I love that.
Definitely international Grand Prix. I think that's a big.
Yeah. Why just stop at?
Yeah, let's not just stop at Grand Prix. Let's go Grand Prix, be able to ride it for like 80% and go international. If I could ride a Grand Prix for 80%, then I'd be blooming. That'd be it. I wouldn't retire, because you'd still want to be better, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and let's face it, you know someone who'll tell you they don't retire when they get to 80% at international Grand Prix.
No, there's no retiring once you reach that. I mean, at one point I was sort of, if I could just, I've always been like wanted my 70%, but then you get that and then you want to get 75. So let's stick it out there and try and get an 80 at international Grand Prix. Might never happen, but you've got to just keep trying, haven't you?
That's it. Well, you heard it here. So Jayne's going for the 80% international Grand Prix. So the day that we all see her do that will be the day we'll send her a message going, hey, 23rd of April 2020 in lockdown. That's what's going to happen. So thank you so much.
Just got to go and make it happen now.
Well, I have absolutely no doubt you will. None whatsoever.
And little Tom.
On Tom, and you'll do it on your 14-2 pony as well.
Yeah, that's it. It'll be the dressage version of Stroller.
So thank you so much, Jayne, for your time. Thank you very much. I know everyone's really enjoyed it. So take care, and we'll see all of you guys on the next Q&A next week.
Yeah, bye. Thank you. Bye.